Welcome back to Global Works TV. From the dense forests of Russia to America's premier sawmills and Germany's traditional workshops, join us on an incredible journey through the world's most impressive timber processing operations. You're about to witness craftsmanship and engineering like never before. We're heading to the Kirov region, specifically to Darovsky district, where Holz House operates one of the most impressive hardwood processing facilities you'll ever see. Now I want you to picture this. Vast forests stretching as far as the eye can see, the kind of old-growth timber that reminds us of when America's own logging industry was in its golden age. This is where our journey begins, out in those dense Russian woodlands where the air is crisp and the trees have been growing for decades, sometimes over a century. NTHE harvesting operation at Holz House is something to behold. They use specialized forestry equipment, modern harvesters that would make any old-time lumberjack both impressed and maybe a little nostalgic for the days of crosscut saws and axes. These machines, equipped with sophisticated cutting heads, can fell, delimb, and buck a tree to specified lengths in just minutes. It's precision engineering at its finest. The harvester operator sits in a climate-controlled cab, using joysticks and computer screens to control hydraulic arms that grip the tree, cut it at the base, and process it right there in the forest. It's a far cry from the dangerous work of the past, but it honors that same tradition of respecting the timber and maximizing every usable inch. Once the logs are processed in the forest, they're loaded onto specialized timber trucks. Now these aren't your average logging trucks. We're talking about vehicles designed specifically for the challenging terrain and weather conditions of the Kirov region. With articulated steering and massive load capacities, these trucks transport hundreds of cubic meters of timber from the forest to the mill. It's like watching a carefully choreographed ballet, but with machines weighing several tons each. When those logs arrive at the Holz House facility, that's where the real magic begins. The log yard and sorting system is a marvel of organization and efficiency. Think of it as the grand station, where every log gets its ticket to the right destination. The facility uses a combination of overhead cranes and ground-based equipment to sort logs by species, diameter, length, and quality grade. This isn't just throwing wood in a pile, it's strategic inventory management that our ancestors would have spent days doing by hand. NTHE sorting system employs what's called a log deck, basically a large storage and sorting area where logs are arranged according to their processing priority. Larger diameter logs might go to one section, while smaller diameter timber heads to another. Different species are kept separate because, as any woodworker knows, oak doesn't process the same way as pine, and birch has its own unique characteristics. Here's something fascinating about hardwood processing that many folks don't realize. The quality assessment that happens at this stage determines the entire feature of that log. Trained graders, and we're talking about people with decades of experience, examine each log for defects, grain patterns, and potential uses. A log with a beautiful clear grain might be destined for furniture or flooring, while one with more knots could become structural timber or pallets. Nothing goes to waste. NTHE mill itself is where tradition and technology truly shake hands. Holz House specializes in hardwood lumber production, working primarily with oak, ash, and birch, species that have built furniture, homes, and tools for centuries. The main production line is an integrated system that would make any engineer proud. It starts with the debarking process, where rotating drums with hardened steel teeth strip away the bark, while powerful water jets wash away debris. This step is crucial because any bark or dirt left on the log can dull the expensive saw blades downstream. After debarking, logs move to the primary breakdown saw, what we call a head rig in the industry. This is typically a large bandsaw or circular saw designed to make the first cuts that transform a round log into rectangular cants or boards. The head rig operator's job is one of the most skilled positions in the mill. They're reading the log, deciding how to orient it for the best yield, and making split-second decisions that can mean the difference between profit and waste. Modern head rigs at facilities like Holz House use laser scanning technology to map each log in 3 dimensions before the first cut is made. Computer optimization software then suggests the best cutting pattern, but it's still the operator who makes the final call, human experience combined with digital precision. The secondary breakdown happens at what's called the gang saw or resaw. Here, those initial cans get cut into the final dimensional lumber, your 2x4s, your 1x6s, whatever the market demands. These saws run at incredible speeds, their blades moving so fast, they're just a blur to the human eye. The timber moves through on powered rollers, and in seconds, a thick cant becomes a stack of perfectly sized boards. What really sets Holz House apart is their edging and trimming system. After the initial sawing, boards often have irregular edges or ends that need cleaning up. Automated edgers use multiple saw blades to trim boards to precise widths, while trim saws cut the ends square and to exact lengths. The system uses photo eyes and sensors to detect defects and optimize each cut for maximum yield. It's the kind of efficiency that the old-time sawyers would have dreamed about. NTHE grading station is where skilled workers sort the finished lumber by quality. The NHLA grading rules, that's the National Hardwood Lumber Association, a system developed right here in America back in 1898, are used worldwide to classify hardwood lumber. Boards are sorted into grades like FAS, firsts and seconds, select, number 1 common, and so on, based on the percentage of clear, defect-free wood they contain. Even after all the automation, this step still relies heavily on the trained human eye. And finally, the lumber moves to the drying kilns, or air drying yards. Proper drying is absolutely critical for hardwood lumber. Rush it, and the wood cracks and warps. Do it right, and you get stable, beautiful lumber that will last generations. Holz House uses modern computer-controlled kilns that carefully regulate temperature, humidity, and airflow to bring the moisture content down from 50 to 60% in greenwood to the 6 to 8% needed for interior applications. This process can take weeks, but it's what separates quality lumber from firewood. NTHE's entire operation at Holz House is a testament to how far we've come in timber processing while still honoring the fundamental principles that have guided the industry for centuries. Respect the wood, maximize the yield, and never compromise on quality. Now let's bring it back home, folks, to one of America's own success stories in the timber industry. Sierra Pacific Industries, founded in 1949 in California, represents everything that's great about American manufacturing and forest stewardship. This is a family-owned company that's grown into the second largest lumber producer in the United States, and their sawmills are absolutely world-class. Sierra Pacific's approach to timber processing embodies that American spirit of innovation and efficiency. Their log yards are impressive operations, where hundreds of thousands of board feet of timber are sorted, stored, and staged for processing every single day. When you drive past one of their facilities, you're looking at what amounts to a precision logistics operation that happens to involve trees. NTHE sorting system at a Sierra Pacific mill typically uses a combination of mechanical and computer-assisted methods. Logs come in on trucks from their sustainably managed forest lands, and that's important to note, because Sierra Pacific owns over 2 million acres of timberland that they manage for continuous production. They're not just harvesting, They're ensuring that forests will be there for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In the log yard, each piece of timber gets evaluated. Modern mills use 3D scanning technology that creates a digital model of every log, measuring diameter, taper, sweep, and detecting internal defects using techniques similar to medical CT scans. This information feeds into optimization software that determines exactly how each log should be processed to maximize value. It's space-age technology applied to one of mankind's oldest industries. Sierra Pacific primarily processes softwoods, species like Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, and white fir that have built America from coast to coast. These are the same species that built the railroad towns, the mining camps, and eventually the suburbs that many of us grew up in. There's a beautiful continuity to that story. NTHE debarking process at Sierra Pacific Mills uses what's called a ring debarker, a machine where the log spins while hydraulically controlled arms with carbide-tipped tools scrape away the bark. It's efficient, it's clean, and it's designed to remove bark without wasting valuable wood underneath. The bark itself doesn't go to waste either. It's typically used for landscaping mulch or as fuel for the mill's boilers, turning waste into energy. NTHE, heart of a Sierra Pacific sawmill, is its primary breakdown system. Many of their mills use a combination of a curve sawyer and a head rig. The curve sawyer handles logs with significant curve or sweep, making the initial cuts to create a flat face. Then the log moves to the head rig, often a massive bandsaw with a blade that can be 50 feet long and several inches wide. These blades are works of art in themselves, made from specially formulated steel and maintained with incredible precision. A dull or improperly tensioned blade can cost a mill thousands of dollars per hour in lost production and wasted wood. The primary breakdown operator sits in a control booth with multiple screens showing the log from different angles. They're making decisions in real time, adjusting the cutting pattern based on what they see. It takes years to become proficient at this job. You're essentially solving a three-dimensional puzzle at high speed, trying to get the most valuable products out of every log while accounting for defects, grain orientation, and market demands. And after the primary breakdown, boards move to the trimmer and sorter system. This is where the mill really shows its technological sophistication. High-speed cameras photograph every board, and computer vision software analyzes them for grade, detecting knots, splits, and other characteristics in milliseconds. Automated sorting gates then direct each board to the appropriate bin. Studs here, dimension lumber there, industrial grade over there. It all happens so fast that boards are moving through the system at rates that would have been unimaginable just a generation ago. Sierra Pacific's edging systems use multiple blade edgers that can process several boards simultaneously, trimming them to precise widths with tolerances measured in 30 seconds of an inch. The optimization software running these systems is constantly calculating the best way to edge each board to maximize value. Sometimes it's better to get one wider board, sometimes two narrower ones, depending on current market prices and the board's characteristics. NTHE finished lumber then moves to the grading chains, where trained graders mark each piece according to standardized rules. For dimension lumber, that's your standard construction lumber. They're following the rules of the American Lumber Standards Committee, standards that go back to the 1920s. Every piece gets stamped with a grade mark that tells you its quality, species, moisture content, and which mill produced it. That stamp is a promise of quality that means the same thing, whether you're building in Boston or building in Boise. What really impresses me about Sierra Pacific's operations is their commitment to using every bit of the log. Sawdust goes to make particle board or gets used as animal bedding. Wood chips are sold to paper mills. Bark becomes mulch or energy. The efficiency would make those old-time loggers proud. They knew that wasting wood was both economically foolish and disrespectful to the forest. NTHE drying process at Sierra Pacific Mills represents another major investment in quality. Their dry kilns are computer-controlled chambers where lumber is carefully dried according to specific schedules developed for each species and thickness. This isn't just about removing water. It's about conditioning the wood so it will perform properly in service, whether that's in a house frame or a piece of furniture. From forest to finished product, Sierra Pacific Industries represents American sawmilling at its finest, combining old-world respect for the resource with new-world technology and efficiency. Let's head across the Atlantic now, folks, to the beautiful Rhineland region of Germany, where timber processing has been a way of life for centuries. Today we're visiting two sawmills that represent something special: smaller, family-owned operations that serve their local communities while maintaining standards of quality that rival the biggest mills anywhere. First up is Geber Eigelshoven GmbH, a company whose name might be a mouthful for us Americans, but whose work speaks a universal language of craftsmanship and quality. This is a family business, the kind where knowledge gets passed down from grandfather to son, where the smell of fresh-cut oak is as much a part of growing up as learning to ride a bicycle. NTHE Eigelshoven Mill specializes in processing round timber into high-quality sawn lumber, and they take an approach that balances tradition with modern efficiency. When logs arrive at their facility, they're dealing primarily with European hardwoods, oak, beech, and ash, species that have been used in European woodworking since the Middle Ages. Their log handling system is scaled appropriately for their operation. We're not talking about the massive cranes you'd see at a large industrial mill, but rather mobile equipment like wheel loaders and forklift attachments designed specifically for timber handling. NTHE, debarking at Eigelshoven is typically done with a mobile debarker, a machine that can be moved to different positions in the yard as needed. For hardwoods, especially oak, proper debarking is critical because the tannins in oak bark can stain the wood if left on too long. What's particularly interesting about this mill is their primary breakdown system. They use what's called a vertical bandsaw for the main cuts, a design that's been around in various forms since the 1800s, but has been refined to incredible precision. The vertical orientation allows for excellent visibility of the cut and makes it easier to handle large diameter logs. The blade itself is a continuous loop of specially hardened steel with carbide-tipped teeth, running on wheels that are precisely aligned and balanced. The blade speed and feed rate are carefully controlled because hardwoods, especially oak, are much more demanding to cut than softwoods. Cut too fast, and you'll burn the wood and dull your blade. Cut too slow, and you're wasting time and money. NTHE operator at this saw is making critical decisions about every cut. With high-quality hardwood logs, the goal isn't just maximum volume, it's maximum value. A log might contain sections perfect for furniture-grade lumber commanding premium prices, while other sections might be better suited for flooring or structural timber. Reading the log and deciding where to make those cuts is an art form that takes decades to master. And after the primary breakdown, boards move through a horizontal resaw if they need further processing, then to the edging station. At Eigelshoven, there's more human involvement in the process. Skilled workers are making decisions about each board, looking for those subtle quality indicators that a computer might miss. NTHE grading at a mill like this often follows both traditional German standards and international standards, depending on the customer. European hardwood grading can be even more exacting than American standards in some ways, with categories that account for the specific requirements of furniture makers, cabinet makers, and flooring manufacturers. Now let's talk about Jacob Kring's Sagework, our second Rhineland mill. This sawmill is special because it represents something increasingly rare, a true community sawmill that serves both commercial customers and private individuals. Remember when every American town had a local sawmill where you could bring your own logs to be cut? That's what Kring's represents, and it's a beautiful thing. Jacob Kring's operates what we might call a more versatile, flexible mill setup. They're equipped to handle everything from large commercial orders to a homeowner who has a few trees from their property that they want milled into lumber for a DIY project. This requires a different kind of operation than a high-volume production mill. Their equipment reflects this versatility. They typically run a horizontal bandsaw mill as their primary breakdown saw, a setup that offers excellent accuracy and the ability to make very thin cuts when needed. These mills are particularly good for producing high-quality, flat-sawn lumber with minimal waste. The blade on a horizontal mill runs in a more traditional orientation, and the log carriage that holds and moves the log through the blade can be incredibly precise, advancing in increments as small as a millimeter. What's fascinating about operations like Kring's is their relationship with local foresters and landowners. They're processing timber from the immediate area, wood that might end up in buildings or furniture just a few miles from where the tree grew. There's a beautiful circularity to that, a connection to place that we've lost in much of modern manufacturing. An NTHE sawing process at Kring's involves more customization than you typically see at a production mill. A customer might come in with specific requirements for a restoration project. Maybe they need boards of a particular width and thickness to match existing woodwork in a historic building. The mill operators work directly with customers to understand these needs and adjust their processing accordingly. It requires skill, patience, and a deep understanding of wood characteristics. And their edging and trimming equipment is typically more manual than what you'd find in a large mill, but don't mistake that for less capable. In the hands of a skilled operator, these machines can produce results just as precise as the automated systems, with the added benefit of human judgment applied to each piece. When you're dealing with specialty orders and custom work, that human element is invaluable. Both Eigelshoven and Krings represent something important in the global timber industry, proof that there's still room for smaller operations, focused on quality, community relationships, and traditional craftsmanship. They're processing many of the same species and producing similar products to the large mills, but they're doing it with a personal touch that's increasingly rare. These Rhineland mills also typically put significant emphasis on proper drying of their lumber. For hardwoods destined for fine woodworking, this is absolutely critical. They might use a combination of air drying and kiln drying, recognizing that some woodworkers prefer air-dried lumber for certain applications. Air drying is slower. It can take a year or more for thick oak boards to air dry properly, but it results in lumber with different characteristics than kiln-dried wood, often preferred for traditional furniture making. NTHE, attention to detail, the respect for the material, and the commitment to serving their communities. These are the values that built the timber industry on both sides of the Atlantic, and it's heartening to see them alive and well in these Rhineland sawmills.